Hi, I'm Katie, host of Focus and Flourish podcast. I used to grind nonstop until I figured out how to automate my systems that ended up helping me achieve a 4-day work week. Now I earn more and work less. Want to do the same? Grab my free 6-figure strategy guide, which is the exact blueprint I use to grow my own business to where I am today. Link in the show notes. Are you new here? Tap subscribe to support the show and never miss an episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Focus and Flourish. I am very excited to pivot some of our conversations around business and systems today and go a little bit deeper with Danielle Polgar. So today's episode is going to be a little bit more about our intuition, decision-making, the fear-based energy a lot of us are feeling in the world right now. And I know that it's one that so many of you need and may not even know you need it. So if you're navigating big decisions, transitions in your life, growth, or just feeling that, constant pull between what feels right and what feels safe, this is definitely for you. So we're diving into the difference between intuition and fear. And because it's so true, sometimes we make fear-based decisions, sometimes we make deeper intuitive decisions. And if you're being honest, the line gets blurry really fast, especially as a small business owner, a photographer, a creative. So we're also going to talk about the patterns that keep people stuck in loops. This is a huge focus of Danielle's work. And so I'm very excited to dive into that because I'm sure we all can say right now what we know our loops are, where we second guess ourselves, where we overthink, where we get anxiety, hesitation, and how that shows up, even more as a small business owner right now. So, because when we're building businesses, especially a creative one, it just becomes a lot more difficult when we are operating from a place of fear, right? So old stories, unprocessed trauma from our childhoods, and when we are out of alignment with ourselves, absolutely everything in our business will be affected, right? So I am so excited to have Danielle Polgar on this podcast. She is a trauma-informed astrological advisor. She's got over 13 years of experience helping people shift their perspective so that they can make clear, grounded, and courageous decisions, which is something we all face quite often in business and in life, right? And I feel like a lot of creative businesses are coming to me right now with a lot of fear around AI, for example, and so fear are things that are out of our control. And today we're going to talk about going deeper and getting out of that surface level space and reconnecting with our intuition. So Danielle's work definitely goes a lot deeper than surface level, like business systems or business insight. She's looking into the patterns underneath it all, right? And the ones that kind of, how do I say this? They quietly drive our behavior. And they can also, these little loops and the underlying things can block our creative expression and keep us from moving forward or being able to even tap into creativity or momentum, right? So through her work, she helps people totally reframe, dissolve limiting beliefs to really step into clarity and confidence in a real lasting way. So we're going to go into all of those topics, as well as how astrology can actually support real life decisions without creating sort of dependency or anxiety around it, and how to use it for a tool of clarity. And so this is just a conversation about coming back home to yourself. The world is a crazy place right now. I'm not afraid to say that out loud here, nor is Danielle. And so we're going to dive in. And Danielle, hello. I'm so happy you're here.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
I'm so grateful. Yeah, I'm really excited about, learning from you and just sharing more about these topics that go unspoken often in our world. So I think I'm just going to dive into sort of asking you some questions that really I feel will be very valuable for this audience. So
Great.
When going through your lens and your education and your work and your business, how would you say, how can someone actually tell the difference between intuition and fear when they're making a big decision? And this can be a life decision or a business decision, but how can they tell the difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everybody encounters that place where it gets really blurry, like you said, because when we make decisions, we're not just making decisions from the logical mind, we're making them from the somatic response of our nervous system that lives and inhabits our body, which is programmed from our early childhood experiences to react and respond in certain ways unless we are consciously tending to healing those patterns. So the way that I've come to understand the difference between intuition and fear is that fear will really stop us in our tracks. It will really force this contraction in our like literal body where we can feel ourselves start to shrink, to hide, to protect, to armor
Right.
ourselves, right? And we then start to move into either a freeze state, which is like complete shutdown response,
Yeah.
or we fight or flight, like however your body is conditioned to respond to a threat, that is what we will show up in the face of fear. Now, totally natural to feel fear, especially if we're on the brink of change or doing something that is out of our comfort zone. The difference between that programming and that conditioning and intuition, which is definitely more of a quieter felt sense within us that pulls us forward, that kind of allows
Mhm.
us to expand into possibility and takes us beyond those conditioned fears into the unknown. I often find that intuition does not follow logical patterns or paths. There's often a sense of, this doesn't really make sense, but I feel myself being drawn to this, or I'm moving in this direction. And I often compare it to animals when they sense something is about to happen in nature. They obviously don't have language for it in the way that we do, but let's say there's a tsunami coming, animals will naturally move to a higher ground. They don't know why they're doing it, but they will naturally move to a higher ground. And then all of a sudden the water comes. We have that built into our system as well. And yet, because so much of this world pulls us out of ourselves, we aren't connected to that inherent response. And so intuition is one of those things that, unlike the conditioning of fear, we have to condition ourselves to trust it. We have to experiment and put ourselves in situations where we test our intuition or strengthen it like a muscle.
Right.
So it's like, if we feel curious about something, we can feel the fear, but move towards it anyway. And, allow ourselves to work with the responses in our nervous system that might come up as a result, like sweating or, shaking. That's
Yeah.
all natural to doing anything different. But then we kind of like essentially stretch our capacity and our window of tolerance for more when we take risks and we even just do something small, like,
Right.
whatever it is, like take that initial step. And then we get to really flex that muscle of intuition and test it out. Like, oh, look at what happened as a result of that.
Right.
Right? Like, I was safe. I thought I wasn't going to be safe, but I'm actually safe.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
I think that what you're speaking to is just so massive as well because, okay, I'm scared, but I'm going to step into it. And I truly don't believe that small business owners, artists, creatives can grow if they stay in their comfort zone. So I think it's almost critical that we put ourselves in positions to take calculated risks. Of course, you're not going to just spend all your, but I'm saying trying something new, making the push. And what's interesting about what you just said is that is the number one place I see a lot of people getting stuck is just, okay, this is working right now. I'm going to keep doing this. And then 3 years later, they're still there. And of course, it's very scary to dive in and take a risk. Like, I'm sure you have a story, and I have a story of a pivotal moment that we took and it worked out,
Sure.
or it was hard, or, so I do have a quick question in response. So, in your life experience, can you pinpoint those moments where you were able to realize you were in a full fight, flight, or freeze state and totally scared, but moved into it and followed your intuition that led you in the right direction?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, the biggest life changing event for me was during my Saturn return in my late 20s, which, if you're familiar, if anybody listening, if you're familiar with that, it is a process of individuation and maturation that everybody goes through between the ages of 27 and 31. During that period for me, I intuitively felt that I was moving into a new direction away from my previous marriage. And it was terrifying for me. I didn't know where I was headed or what was going to happen as a result. I was walking into the complete unknown, and it took me about, it's funny you say 3 years, but it took me about 3 years to actually take that leap. And once I did, it really proved to me that my intuition was spot on, because
Right.
life kind of conspired to meet me where I was and really showed me, like, yes, you can trust. And I
Yeah.
think that that's kind of the thing that we're so afraid of taking, you know, any type of risk really, because we want to know for certain that we're going to be okay,
A
right?
hundred
Yeah.
percent. I still can admit right now, I want that too. And
Yep.
I've learned to train my brain and, practice certain somatic exercises and do certain things that remind me I'm safe, even when I'm moving in a direction of unknown. It's the only way I've grown my business.
Yeah.
The only
Same.
way. So I'm really curious. I know you've just got a very extensive background from being a therapist to being so educated around trauma, old patterns. And I think that a lot of people right now are returning to those because the world feels unstable, but more specifically, the photography industry feels very unstable. The onset of AI, the unknowns of tech innovation, and not just photography, like all creative business owners. They're like, am I going to have a job in 5 years? Right? Web design, graphics. I mean, the list goes on here, but it's really weird. It's a weird, weird time. So I'm so curious what are the most common patterns that you see that keep people in their loop or second guessing themselves, where they're sort of on that hamster wheel and can't get off? And I don't mean the kind of hamster wheel of overworking. I mean the hamster wheel of like fully stuck in a loop.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I mean, let's put it this way. Anytime we're in a period of instability and uncertainty, we are going to cling to the known. So whatever is familiar, even if we're like not entirely comfortable with it and we know something needs to change, when we don't know how to specifically change that, we will likely cling to what is familiar, and we will just loop back into those old trauma responses, right? And what a brilliant design that we do that. It's no judgment. It's like brilliant design that our own intelligence basically just knows that there is a threat. I don't know what's on the other side of this. I don't know how to operate within this field of mystery, right?
Right. And
And
I'm going
so
to keep myself safe.
I'm going to keep myself safe. I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that. And so the challenge then becomes, again, like, how do I listen to that, but not let it drive the vehicle of my life, and not get like, I personally believe that humans have a natural drive to evolve and to change and grow.
Yeah.
And at the same time, because of these conditioned responses, we can get stuck and kind of almost like entangled in these old patterns that keep us from aligning with that, let's say, mission, that inner mission, that quiet mission that wants to bring us to our highest expression. And what's fascinating about the work that I do is I weave in astrology into a therapeutic relationship, and where we work with the nervous system. But why astrology is so important in the work that I do is that it helps us to understand cycles and patterns. And so when we see ourselves in this moment in history in particular, we can also look back at what was happening at different times in humanity's evolution, what certain, astrological transits were happening at those times that we can learn from. How did people respond to what was going on back in World War II or in the Industrial Revolution? As both of those periods have similar astrological transits that we're experiencing now. And what's interesting is when you track that, you can see that people back in those times were just as afraid of technology as we are today.
That's
Just
so
as afraid.
Yeah. And like change and
yeah.
all the things that were, the machinery coming out, that this are our job, So yes, I love that you brought that up, actually. History, right? History shows us that we evolve, right? And now this weird, mysterious sort of, technology is a new form of that. And I want to talk about staying in alignment and being a conscious business owner in these times. And again, I just want to this has been, I talk about this a lot in my course, in my content, but it becomes deeply challenging if you are not managing your life, your personal life in alignment with yourself and in touch with yourself, it parallels with your business. When you're not in alignment with your core values, it's usually going to be your intuition that tells you that, and you might just brush it off. But I have had probably 100 different experiences in my career where I knew deep down I was working for someone or taking a shoot or doing something that was not in alignment with my core values. And how did it make me feel? Not good is one way. However, every time that happened, it helped me grow. It helped me learn. It helped me change the way I show up online, in person, to really start attracting the types of people that I want to work with. And I know that this is also very taboo and like sort of trending right now of like attracting your ideal clients. But I just want to say I really believe in it. And if you are listening to this and you are feeling pretty in alignment with your business, then what is the next step you can take to just get a little bit uncomfortable? And if I were to just make a recommendation around this, I have always built my next thing with the previous creative endeavor on lock. So you have something that you're good at and that you can do when you're tired, when you're pregnant, when you're going through a hard time. What's that thing for you as a creative? For me, it was weddings, because I got to a point where I went through some very traumatic events during my busiest wedding seasons, but it became a creative, positive escape for me. So I continued to build it and build it and build it, because my deeper intuition knew that lifestyle was not going to work for me, because I wanted 2 children. And so instead of letting go of that thing, I just kept it running while I quietly built my next thing. And now I primarily work with female therapists and, people in the health and wellness sector, 98% women. So that is I wasn't ready for that in my 20s. I wasn't tuned in enough. I didn't know myself well enough, and I didn't have enough life experience. But what I'm sharing with the people listening, if there is something that you can do on almost no sleep, like riding a bike, stick with that. Get that really dialed so you can take a calculated risk without just so much fear. It puts you in you have a little bit of control here on this side, and then just keep following your intuition. Right?
Yes.
And I think it's really critical that we also just all remember, Danielle introduced me to this book, Time, Energy, and Money, that it's a triangle, right? So I know that money is a big topic. Money, 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 money. It's not all about the money. It's like money is equivalent to your time. Your time is equivalent to your energy. And both of those things are equivalent to money. So I think that actually not listening to your intuition And being drained by that fear can actually negatively impact your income.
100%. I couldn't agree
Right?
more. Oh my God. Yeah. I think that is like so spot on, because what you're speaking to is that titration of the nervous system of like, if we can create a felt sense of security, which is, what we need in order to feel safe enough to take risks and to keep that stability there within us as we are reaching out into the unknown,
Right.
then we're more likely to, continue with stretching towards that, new expression or that new idea or that new extension of us. And what you're also speaking to is that piece of alignment. Like when we're not in alignment with our intuition, our life is going to show us. Our life is going to tell us, it's going to echo it back to us. And one of the places where it does that is financially.
Yeah.
It's like it's such a direct connection in my
I
experience. Yeah,
I agree on a very deep level with that. And if it's not financially, your body's going to tell you. You're going to
exactly.
start getting stomach aches, whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
100.
someone's going to tell you. So, how can, first, before we talk about astrology, would be some advice you have for our audience in regards to getting in alignment before we dive into astrology? Because some people are so scared right now of like, are we going to be able to pay the bills? Are we safe? Should I even go full time as a photographer? Is that stupid or whatever? These are just, I'm echoing things I hear from my community, but what are just some like actionable sort of pieces you can share that can
Mhm.
inspire people from?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of it comes down to embodiment. And when we're living in a future that doesn't exist yet, that's when we're not embodied and we take ourselves out of our experience and put ourselves into all these potential outcomes that aren't guarantees. And really, let's face it, nothing is a guarantee. So even if we put our heart and soul into something, it doesn't mean it's going to turn out to be a success, but that might be an experience we need to have, right? For our own personal growth. So what I find is really important is presenting ourselves to our current reality. And when we find ourselves kind of like veering off into the future, to just like really pull it back, like really rein it in and be like, what's working right now? What are 5 things I can smell, taste, hear, touch,
Yeah.
and bringing it into like a more sensual experience, an embodied experience. Something else that's actually kind of a little bit more weird that I find people are resistant to, but is really, really effective, is to actually have like a staring contest with yourself in the mirror, which can actually create this resonance. I mean, if you do it with another person, it creates this resonance between limbic systems, which facilitates safety in the nervous system, because that's what
Wow.
mothers and babies do when they're nursing. It's co-regulation,
Yeah, but
basically.
regulating yourself.
Exactly. So you don't necessarily need somebody to do that with. You can do it with yourself in a mirror. And it's almost more awkward to do it with yourself than it is to do it with another person.
I did not know
So,
that. I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if ever you want to challenge yourself to just connect with yourself in a deep way, that is one way to do it. Even if you set the timer for like a minute, just
Right.
looking straight into your own eyes and just notice, being aware of what comes up, what kinds of sensations in your body, notice the resistance, notice the judgments, and just facilitate more awareness of your present experience. And
Right.
I find that really, if you do it as a practice, can be incredibly transformative.
Oh my gosh, I've never thought to do that. You just taught me something because
Cool.
all I talk about in my house with a 2 and 5-year-old is how co-regulation, and I
Hmm.
never thought about it for me.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that it's just accessible. We all have a mirror.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Okay. So, Danielle, so some people are like, I want to get to the astrology part. Some of you might be newer. How can astrology help people and creatives make real life big decisions without becoming anxious?
Yeah, that's a huge one. Astrology has started to become more popularized in the past couple of years, which I think is amazing, because this is a tool that we've been using for thousands of years to understand who we are in this great mystery, right? And what this is all about. And it's also not only a map, but it's also a timing tool, which we can get a sense for what season of life we're in and what, how do we harness that season? Are you going to be planting at this time, or are you going to be harvesting at this time? Right. Like, and that's unique to each person based on their astrological signature that they were born with. So I think because of the prevalence of astrology and the access to it now, people are really like, wow, I can't get enough, and I think that's great. However, I do find that a lot of the astrology that you will see on social media is similar to mainstream media in that it is very activating, and how it gets your attention is through fear a lot of the time. Or like,
Oh,
I gotta be prepared, right? Like,
yeah.
this thing is coming. I gotta be prepared. I gotta know what's happening and how to deal with it.
I was going
And
to
it's,
ask you about this at the end. I totally agree.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, it is a helpful tool to
Right.
understand what's coming, right? Just like, we want to know what the weather's going to be in a week when we're going on vacation, right?
Yeah.
It's important for us to know what the weather's going to be if we're going on vacation. Like, what am I packing? Am I packing a raincoat? Am I packing my bikini? Like, what's going on, right? We want to be prepared for what's coming, and that makes sense. However, if we're bracing for every astrological transit, then it no longer becomes a useful tool. It becomes something that's just going to feed us more anxiety and,
Right.
keep us in that fearful state. And in my experience, having studied astrology for 20 plus years, often the things that we fear don't manifest in the way that we think they will. So we are given the lessons that we need to learn. We are invited into transformation in the way that our soul has designed us to experience. And so, really, it's about how we respond to what's showing up and how we co create with, the spiritual realm or the astrological, coordinates or whatnot, and then empowers us more. So it doesn't become like we're victims to what's happening in the sky, but more like, oh, that's good to know. I can understand what's happening through me in this phase of my life, and I can respond to it in this way appropriately.
Right. Which
Um,
is a tool. That's a
yeah.
tool. And what I'm so curious about your take on, we might have people listening who like know nothing about astrology. Maybe they have a judgment about astrology. Maybe they had a bad experience about astrology. So, what would you say? You mentioned a map, which I love. You mentioned more information. I love that because people can go as deep as they want on this. But for someone who's like brand new, of just like, I want to check this out, what is a way to just sort of see this from as a tool and a map that they could kind of get started with? Do you have resources on your website? What
Mhm.
would you recommend someone who just genuinely wants to learn more?
I think, honestly, the best way to experience the power of astrology is to get an astrology reading from an
Cool.
experienced astrologer,
Yeah.
because that is really going to show you how it functions and how it works as far
Yes.
as a tool, as a reflective tool also. Because basically, I mean, to bring the concept of a mirror back, what I'm looking at when I look at somebody's chart isn't, it's telling me symbolically who this person came here to be. It's their potential in this lifetime. And so I get to be in a dialogue with someone about this potential and the symbols that I see to uncover and explore, who they came here to be, what their talents are, what their challenges are, what experiences they've had, and how that informs who they are in this moment. And so it's a both and. There's both the understanding of the self, but also understanding where we are at in this moment in time and
Right.
what kinds of, experiences are up for us right now, how we can best be in alignment with that, rather than what happens with people sometimes is that they get off track and have to have some sort of crisis. How do we avert that kind of experience and avoid that kind of experience, so that we can minimize our suffering on this
Yes.
plane, right?
Yes. And my first experiences with astrology were exactly that. And it actually just informed me more on, I don't want to even say myself because but it just gave me so much information. And what I found for me, it's not like I got a reading every month or was constantly obsessed with it, but it gave me enough information to have more courage and more trust and more consistency in the path that I wanted to go, even though society and my parents, and, I was very young when I started my business. A lot of people were telling me not to do it. And so when I had that first reading, it was actually really powerful and definitely informed like a decade of my life of following my intuition, which has led me here now 20 years later and running this business. So I absolutely want to talk for hours about this. Like, really. So what's really great, everybody, is in the show notes, I'm going to include, more resources Danielle has put together, sort of what she does, because she's an artist herself. She's a trauma therapist. She's an astrologer. It's more than just what's up in the sky. So in the show notes, please explore all of her offerings and, take a leap, maybe shoot her an email. If not, I know she's got tons of incredible content on her website that's just really awesome to read, and her Substack. So I thank you so much for being here, Danielle. This was awesome. I am rooting for less fear and more positive, intuitive vibes this year. So I'm very glad you could join us.
Yeah, me too. And just if I could say one thing, astrology shouldn't make you feel like you're doing something wrong.
Ooh, I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Astrology should make you feel like you're doing something wrong.
If anything, it should reflect back to you that you actually are the expert on your own life, and that it should give you permission to be the fullest expression of that person without feeling like you have to perform or behave in a certain way for anybody. And in that way, it returns the power to you, and it helps you come back home to yourself, which is what I do in my work with my clients. And specifically because we've been talking about alignment, just to plug my alignment journey, which is a 6-session series where we talk about your chart and we use it as a tool for self-exploration, but also for transformation, to get you from where you are right now into who you envision yourself to be. And so that's on my website. But I also offer my Prism session, which is an astrological deep dive that helps you get to see yourself in a different light, and hopefully, give you the inspiration and the courage to be who you came here to be.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am very grateful, and I really am so glad you were on the show, and thank you. All right,
Thanks.
everybody, check out the show notes and we will be in touch.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it on your favorite social media platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your share can help someone improve their photography business and their life. Use the hashtag Focus and Flourish Podcast so we can see your posts and connect with you there.